Ever wonder what makes the greats great? What makes the successful successful? What makes the brilliant brilliant? Our Tuesday meetups with the celebrities of pharma industry and science are your one-stop shop to all these answers and more. Join us for Pies of Life, an initiative of the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program, where we bring your dream mentors to you.
I've had the good fortune of having known Naren was he was at Merck, and so it brings back good memories, and it's nice to see him looking young as ever. So my name is Devan Mehrotra. I have worked in pharma for 30 years, 25 of which have been at Merck. I started out, I grew up in India, and I had very good role models. My father's father was Mahatma Gandhi's personal assistant. So we grew up in a very unique environment under very interesting ground rules and principles. And that's where I think I learned the value of what I call the 7 Ps. So if you don't mind, can I just show just a couple of slides, Naren? I'll keep it to 9 minutes. Yeah. This is my super quick journey. I had two great role models growing up in India, and really the main point that I want to make is what I learned from them are part of these what I call the 7 P values for success. And so the first, of course, the 7 P values, I mean 7 keywords that start with the letter P. So the first is passion. I learned passion, both from my mom's father with a PhD in physics, and then my dad's dad. So I learned perseverance. So as you guys think about what are you going to do next after your postdocs, again, I thought I might just reflect back as we have this conversation in terms of what are the kinds of things that have made me reasonably successful in my career. And so it's passion, it's perseverance. I actually did train in India. I did my bachelor's and master's in pretty theoretical statistics. I was so happy to hear University of Delaware, Sumit. So I actually got my PhD at University of Delaware 30 years ago in statistics. And I then went on, spent about 5.5 years in the Chicago area, worked for a drug company there. Didn't really enjoy it. I mean, I learned a lot, but I really wanted to go to Merck. So every year I was interested in going to Merck, and I finally made it there in 1996. So exactly 25 years ago. But in my early years, again, some other key value terms that sort of became important in my development was proficiency, perseverance, participation. These are all really, really important. And then I won't go through my Merck experience other than to say, as you guys sort of, if you think about what is going to happen next, so either you will remain in academia, or you might go to industry, or maybe work with the government, and we can talk about, the opportunities there. Certainly from a data analytics and statistics perspective, I'm happy to share my thoughts. But if you go my traditional route, what I call my traditional route, you start out, as working on projects, and you become a team leader. You move on to group leadership, and then you become, leading departments. And again, that's less important again than going back to the P's. Passion, you got to maintain passion. You have to get into the game. So participation is key. You cannot sit on the sidelines. Partnership is really important. I mean, Naren is a CEO. He knows better than anybody else the importance of partnerships, right? And prioritization. You might be super excited about working on many different projects. You cannot do it all. You have to prioritize. And again, what you prioritize is up to you, but it should be driven by something you're passionate about, where you'll have opportunities to participate and so on. you have to keep making investments internally where you are, as well as externally. And if things go well, then you're going to get recognized. That creates more opportunities to influence, to have an impact, and then it goes back to that cycle. Uh, so that was just a whirlwind tour, because I do want to show you two slides in terms of what do statisticians and data scientists do in pharma. I'm sure you've gotten a good understanding from their end, but I'll just use two slides just in 1 or 2 minutes. So this is just a summary of the 7 significant p-values for success: proficiency, passion, participation, perseverance, partnership, prioritization, and perhaps the most important, which is your professional reputation, right? As you invest in your development and in the development of those around you, your reputation is going to be your greatest asset for your entire career. Now, most of these things are obvious, but sort of, I thought it might be worth reinforcing the value of these. And then my last slide here was just, because we grew up in what is often called a Gandhian environment. One of my favorite quotes of Gandhi is, actions express priorities. And, again, just keep in mind that as you think about what you want to do next, or what you have been doing, what you might be doing in the future, if you drive your actions through priorities that are well aligned with where you can make a difference, where you can add value, and where you can continue to build on your passion, that is what this is all about. So these are the guiding principles that I grew up with, and these are guiding principles that I'm very happy to report. At least in big pharma, there are some companies where this is the kind of atmosphere where people thrive, because they're given an environment where you are going to develop, and you're going to do well, and you're going to help others do well. So with that, I'm going to go to my last 2 slides, and I wanted to share with you just 2 slides, what it is that I do, and my team and I do pretty much on a day-to-day basis. So I lead a group of statisticians and data scientists who work on a number of projects. We are a group of about 75, 80 people. And so these are some of the examples that, the project work that we work very closely with other subject matter experts. And so Merck, and there's nothing proprietary here, so that's why. Yeah, so oncology early development, until about 7 years ago, Merck, the company where I work, until about 7, 8 years ago, Merck didn't really have that much of an investment in oncology, in cancer treatments, but that has changed substantially. And so we, of course, have a leading biologic called Keytruda that has been already approved for almost 20 different types of cancer. And the drug doesn't work. It works for a lot of patients, but not in everyone. And so many companies, including Merck, are investing heavily in other new compounds in oncology. And sometimes we are the victims of our own success, where we have an amazing pipeline, we have an amazing group of scientists that we work closely with. So we have internally, again, all public knowledge, more than 20 different types of compounds in the cancer space that are being developed. And so statistically speaking, there are these very interesting opportunities to do what are called umbrella trials. And so the statisticians and the data scientists work very closely with our colleagues in clinical, in commercial, in regulatory, in manufacturing, on the biologics and the drug side, where this is an example of the kind of thing. There's room for innovation where you might look at, say, maybe 3 different compounds, and you really don't know which one of these is going to be the most promising. You cannot do a large scale, pivotal phase 3 trial for every compound in development. It's too expensive. So there are some very creative ways where we can do early screening of these compounds in these smaller scale clinical trials. So tremendous opportunities for the statisticians working with, like I said, other subject matter experts to screen in an efficient way, what is the best compound, the best compounds for a certain type of cancer. And so this is done under something called umbrella trial framework. We also invest quite heavily, and we are very closely involved in an area called oncology biomarkers, where these drugs or biologics do not work in everyone, as I said earlier. And so again, using gene expression information as an example, or better on, getting a better understanding of the tumor microenvironment, we are able to sort of zoom in closer into which of these types of compounds is likely to succeed in clinical trials. So this is this type of work. The results feed into our discovery efforts to help identify new types of compounds and new types of mechanisms in terms of how you can harness the immune system to beat cancer. But they also move in the direction of what are called companion diagnostics, where you might have determined unambiguously through clinical trials that you have, say, a biomarker such as PD-L1 expression levels, or something called MSI high, or tumor TMB, tumor burden. And again, very, very important role and tremendous opportunities for statisticians and data analysts to really have an impact in this biomarker space. And then moving to the top right, this is, we do about maybe 50 to 60 clinical trials in what's called the clinical pharmacology space. Most of these are clinical trials that enter what are called first in human studies. And most of these are outside oncology, outside cancer. So for other types of diseases where you go into healthy volunteers, oftentimes medical students, from Penn, for example, or other medical schools, they volunteer to participate in these trials. And we really want to get an early read on some of these compounds. Are these drugs generally well tolerated and appear to be reasonably safe before we can start using them and trying them out in patients. And there are newer technologies that are being looked at all under a broad umbrella called digital R&D. And so there are examples where you might have, in the old days, the patient would come to the clinic, the hospital, and they would draw blood to look at, maybe drug levels or whatever it is you're looking for in the blood. Now, in some cases, the patient doesn't have to do that. They can just take using this technology, this dried blood spot technology, they just basically, take they prick their finger, they take a tiny amount of blood, they basically put it in this and they ship it. I mean, they mail it in the mail and gets to the site, and that's where the analysis is done. There are also, there's a lot in the digital R&D looking at these mobile technologies, tremendous opportunities for statisticians and data analysts and data scientists to really, help figure out the amount of data being collected is huge. So the question is, how do you make sense? How do you detect signal from very noisy data? There's an area called experimental medicine, where these are very, very interesting, small focused trials that may not even involve giving anybody any new drug or an experimental drug, but just understanding, whether it's for some lung disease, celiac disease, or maybe you're making something to prevent ticks, or like say Lyme disease. What happens when a tick bites you? What is the cascade of events that happen that lead to Lyme disease? We actually have people who volunteer in some of these experimental medicine trials who volunteer to be bitten by these ticks, and then we make the right measurements. We design these trials working with the other subject matter experts. We collect the data, we analyze the data, And collectively as a team, we decide, what does this mean, what to do next? And then last but not least on the slide is this, is the pharmacogenetics. So I think it was Chong who said you were a statistical geneticist. So yeah, so we actually invest, we are one of the few companies that invest very heavily in pharmacogenetics, where we are trying to link human genetics with drug response. And so here is an example. I believe one of you mentioned you work in the asthma area. So there's something here for everyone, where this is in a pharmacogenetic study where we were able to, in just a 110 patient clinical trial, we were able to link a particular DNA variant to drug response in asthma. And so this was, I'll spare you the details, but these are the patients who did have that DNA polymorphism, at least one copy of the minor allele. And so there's a very strong treatment effect in these types of patients, not much in the other types of patients. So here's a real example of precision of personalized medicine. And we then took this read, we were able to do another trial and replicate this finding. So again, statisticians play a key role in enabling such discoveries and confirming them. And then my last slide. So again, this is looking to the left of clinical trials. We actually do a lot of work in what's called the discovery space or preclinical. So one of you mentioned working in Boston and actually working with some Merck colleagues in Cambridge. So we work my team works very closely with that Cambridge team. And so there's a guy named, whose name is Topher Wolk, who's there. And we actually, one of my guys set up his bioinformatics pipeline. So again, the application involved microbiome. We do a lot of machine learning. We've been doing this for the past 20 years. A lot of work in imaging, in safety assessment, in these preclinical models, using machine learning for, in an area in chemistry called QSAR, quantitative structural association relationships. And last but not least, on the right portion of the slide is what's called the chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. We just refer to this very loosely as manufacturing. Again, tremendous opportunities to use statistical design of experiments, statistical learning, and statistical application to help make sure that the drugs, the biologics, the vaccines that we are making have the right qualities, and so on and so forth. So I spoke more than I wanted to, my apologies, but hopefully this gives you a glimpse of the world that my team lives in and the kinds of projects that we work on. So I'll stop there and happy to take reactions and questions.
Thank you, Dev.
I think I have a question. I just, that was from the first slide when you showed the biomarker discovery. So what in the algorithm, what kind of data sets do you, or what kind of experimental data sets do you analyze? Is it like LCMS based data set, or which is mostly in proteomics, lipidomics, or metabolomics sector, or is it like purely genomics based screening?
Yeah, great question. The short answer is all of the above. So yeah, so we collect proteomics, genomics. And as you know, the newer technologies are coming around. Things are getting cheaper to collect more data, and so really this is understanding what is happening in the tumor microenvironment and looking at it from every possible angle, and linking what you are seeing in the tumor microenvironment for that cancer patient, and seeing how is that associating with whether or not that person is responding to certain types of treatments. Because this gives us clues as to maybe some types of people are responding, some are not. And could it be explained by some differences either in their tumor microenvironment, or could be explained that plus a combination of that and maybe their host DNA environment and so on.
Devan, thank you so much for the amazing presentation. I have a question. How did you manage to get exposure to all areas of statistics, including the early stage, late stage, and even like non-clinical statistics while working in the industry?
Yeah, great question, Chong. So, I remember I used those 7 p-values, and so my passion has always been to I get very concerned if my my comfort zone becomes too narrow. So I'm always expanding my comfort zone, and so I'm constantly wanting to try new things. So I know that there are a lot of people, a lot of statisticians in the pharma industry who will start out maybe in the preclinical area and they will remain there for the rest of their life. Or they will start out in, say, late stage clinical development and they will stay there for the rest of their life. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their own passion. Everyone has their own journey. So I am particularly interested in wanting to learn more. And so I've had the good fortune of being able to work everywhere from statistical applications all the way from discovery, from chemistry applications, all the way to preclinical, clinical trials, post-marketing, epidemiology, and so on. So my way to summarize this is, keep trying new things and don't be afraid to fail, because really the only way to succeed is to fail, because that's how you learn.
Yeah. Thank you for a great answer. I really admire your intellectual curiosity.
Well, thank you for using that term, because that is a key term. People who are curious tend to be successful. So it's not a must-have, but it's often a good trait of somebody who is going to succeed in life. Akshay, I don't think you were on the call when we introduced each other.
Yeah, sorry, I've just been traveling a lot today, so I didn't get time to get on this call immediately, sorry. Thank you so much for sharing the presentation. I got a few of the slides, but it seemed very interesting, even so. So I was wondering, I've seen a lot of companies out here. So I'm currently located in Toronto, and I've seen a lot of companies out here, especially in discovery, using AI and machine learning in discovery phases. And I got towards the end of your presentation that you're also looking to implement that in, let's say, CMC, as you mentioned in your last slide. So why do you feel that companies are not investing more in that area as of yet? Is it just because investors are more excited to have AI in discovery phases, or is it a slowly shifting phase into implementing AI and machine learning in all other areas of developing what's called a pharmaceutical drug?
Yeah, great question. So AI and machine learning are probably the most popular terms these days. It's impossible to escape from anybody mentioning these terms. So at Merck, interestingly, we actually began using machine learning about 22 years ago. And it was mostly being used at that time in the chemistry space, where we actually worked with Leo Breiman and some at Berkeley, and then some folks at Stanford. And in fact, if you're familiar with some of these more popular tools in machine learning, there's a tool called Random Forest. So the first R code for Random Forest was actually written by Andy Liao in my shop, 20 plus years ago. So we've been doing it for a long time, well before it became a buzzword. But while it started out in the chemistry area, trying to screen different compounds, it then evolved fairly quickly into other applications. And where we have been in the last 10 years with machine learning, it has become a very dominant tool in clinical trials, and more so in precision medicine. where we've been using machine learning tools in the genomics area, but we've also been using machine learning tools in routine clinical trials where you might do, say, a mid-stage trial, and maybe in an overall average sense, it looks like this new drug looks promising. And the question is, when you invest in the next final stage of testing in your pivotal phase 3 trial, do you take all types of patients into that trial, or can you use some machine learning tools to better understand what are the types of patients that can be clearly identified, those types of patients who are more likely to benefit from the drug. Those, so that differentiation between the sort of responders and non-responders to whatever new drug you're making or biological vaccine. So what we are finding is that there is a myth that machine learning can only be used when you have 20, 30, 40,000 people, very large number. No, that's not correct. When done properly, and that's the key, right? When done properly, we have found that there is value add for using machine learning tools, even for relatively modest sized clinical trials, only like maybe 200 or 300 people, we can still use these effectively.
I have like two questions. One is like, what I have understood from applications of the data-based approaches in process development.
Sumit, just a minute. Just to let everyone know, there's a big thunderstorm going on right now. So if I lose power, because this happened 2 hours ago, that's the reason. So I'm not putting my laptop down. It's just that we might lose power. So just a heads up. Okay, please go ahead.
So one of the I am not very much into data analysis and all those part, but what I have understood from my colleagues who works on this area is that one of the problems is those who do this data analytical part and apply it for, say, process development. So a process guy may not know how to use data analysis, and a data analytical guy who do this data analysis may not know actual process. So how do you feel like, is there a gap between these two streams, and how is that tackled in industry? And
yeah,
another thing I have is like about the amount of data, because most of this like multivariate data analytical approaches require huge variability in the data sets. And generally for the applications like you mentioned, is it not possible to get a very structured data set experiments done, right? So it will be for a random from different sources that you get those data. So how do you like manage those large amount of data sets and the variability that is required?
Yeah, great questions. So the first one, yes, you're right. No single person or no single skill set is going to be able to work in isolation on a project. That's why it always takes a team. Very, very important. So yeah, so that gets to your first question. And in terms of the second question.
Can I belabor, ask you to expand a little bit on that first question itself, because that's, in fact, that is one of the major problems that I'm also having right now in our own company and people that I interact with. The language we use is so different, right? The statisticians, just English language that we use is different. So how do you overcome, like, what is the education system going to be changed, or should there be some courses across? I'd love to like elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and so in some sense, having done this for many years, I mean, of course, I've appreciated starting a while back that it, as I said, it does take a team, and so we know what we know, and we know what we don't know, and so you're absolutely right. What seems to be happening right now, and I've detected this interestingly in the commercial division at Merck. So I work in the R&D division that's called Merck Research Labs, but we also have a counterpart commercial division, marketing division, which is a branch of Merck and Company. So very interesting. 3 weeks ago, I was in a conversation where I learned something very interesting. There are about 300 people in that organization that have either data science or data analytics as part of their job role, their title. But it turns out that upon further examination, and I'll spare the details, well, it is confidential, I cannot reveal it anyway. But as we took a closer look, it turned out that only 20 out of these 300 plus people were truly data scientists. Now, and so I want to be very careful here. It doesn't mean that the other 280 plus people were not adding value. They were definitely adding value, right? But they were adding value in ways that almost remained hidden under a generic label like data scientist. So I think where we have to be careful is not, where a lot of the world seems to be going is, if you call yourself a data scientist, there is a perception, perhaps baked in some reality, that you will command a very high salary, which is somewhat true if you use that. But then, of course, you cannot hide behind that label, because the truth is going to come out. And, it's like, you might have a very valuable skill set, but, it's not fully aligned with the term data scientist. Now, I've asked many statisticians over the years, by the way, and including people who call themselves data scientists, do you know where the term data science came from? Nobody knows, right? Well, I know because the term data science came from Bell Labs, right? So there was a statistician there who coined the term data science. And so in a very high level manner of speaking, I mean, there is no single definition of data science, but basically what he was laying out was, it would help for the person who's a data scientist to have maybe some, at least, relevant knowledge in statistics, some relevant knowledge of computer science, and some relevant knowledge of whatever application that you're going to be working on. So whether it's biologics, whether it's vaccines, whether it's commercial, Wall Street type work, manufacturing, it doesn't matter, right? So what I've appreciated over the years is that, I mean, we work so closely with our colleagues in manufacturing. We work so closely with our colleagues in clinical, in marketing. As long as there is a full appreciation that no single person has that skill set, and as long as there is continued education that no single person can own the term data science, right? I think progress could be made. But yeah, so again, great question, a long answer to that simple question. But my main summary point is that, we have to be really careful. Just because somebody, if you want to quote hire a data scientist, make sure you look under the hood. What skill set are you really hiring beyond just a label? So so it is, and it's not like they have to be experts in statistics, but they have to know basic statistics, the basic principles of statistics. And if they don't, they certainly could acquire that with the proper training. Likewise, so ultimately it's all about, being strong in one area, and that depends on your formal training. So if you're trained as a chemist, I mean, a chemist can be a data scientist, of course. A statistician can be a data scientist. A computer scientist can be a data scientist, yes. But it doesn't mean that just because you're a statistician, you're a data scientist. Just because you're a computer science, you're a data scientist, and so on.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Maybe the second question that Sumit asked was variability, I guess, right? Variability. How do you?
Oh yeah. I saw your second question, if I remember correctly, was different types and different sources of data. So this multivariable framework. Yeah, it's a really good question, Sumit, because we are running into this all the time. So the question that was asked earlier about biomarkers, right? That's an example where you have so many different sources of information on a given patient, and you don't know which factor or factors collectively segregate responders from non-responders, right? And that is really hard to do, but that is where the gold is, right? Because ultimately, I mean, what is precision medicine, right? It is all about matching the right patient with the right treatment. And I've been telling my team for many years, there are two things that you cannot escape. One is taxes, and one is that one day, whether you like it or not, you will be a patient, right? So always think like a patient. When you go to get a prescription, you want to be assured that the prescription that you are getting is going to work for you. You will get cured, or you will feel better, you will feel well, right? And so all of us on this call, regardless of your background, regardless of your job role, regardless of if you're a CEO or an ordinary statistician like myself, it doesn't matter what your background is or your training is. If you're going to be thinking about things like precision medicine, which are so personal to all of us, right? To the question back to Sumit, I mean, this is what it's all about, is that it's very easy to say, I've looked at these markers and I haven't found anything that tell me whether this patient will respond or not. You have to keep expanding that, and maybe there is partial information in there. You augment that with something else, and then the pieces fall together, and now you have find the perfect explanation, what we call the perfect signature, with certain inputs, that if you can develop that signature, that predictive signature, you can now say, okay, well, I have a predictive signature. I'm now very close to predicting based on this type of information put together on you as a patient, and I can tell you whether drug A, drug B, or drug C, which is the best drug for you.
Okay. Any other questions or follow-up?
I have a simple one. So I had a friend who told me once that you need to pick up at least one programming language, and it'll be very useful in whatever industry that you are in. So I wanted to start learning a bit of Python. So in your suggestion, in our field, what is the kind of programming language that will be the most useful? Like, I'm not sure how much I can implement in my process, but to at least learn it and see how I can use it later is something that I'm looking forward to trying to do.
Yeah, thanks, Akshay. A really good question. Yeah, I would encourage everyone. Data science is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to be this encompassing term that no matter where you work, in some shape or form, you will be called upon to be a data scientist. And with that in mind, it is very helpful to be ready for that. If you're not there already, Python is an excellent thing that if you can, even if you become reasonably familiar, you don't have to become an expert. Becoming reasonably familiar with Python would be very helpful. If you think that you might want to approach a career in data science, then you definitely would have to learn more languages. And the language that I would strongly recommend is R. So it is, and what's nice about R and Python, these tools are available for free. And unlike older people like myself, I grew up in grad school. We use SAS, and I still use SAS. And every year I keep telling myself, so I know a little bit of R now, but Python is on my list. It's one of my personal goals by the end of this year to have learned Python.
But I think Jade or Indy usually like today's it's raining. It's not your days, but
I guess so. I have like a more like a general question. It seems like you have a lot of experience mentoring, and I was wondering like how that, if you could talk a little bit about like how that works at Merck. So for example, like when someone joins the company, it's she or he like are assigned like with mentors, and if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for that excellent question. Merck, I'm very happy to report, we invest very heavily in people development. So anybody who comes in, regardless of level, whether you're a junior or a midterm person, you obviously have a manager that you work closely with. The manager will assign you projects, but we also assign you what we call a buddy, and that buddy is there to really help you navigate this new environment. So that buddy is your friend, and that person is, these are pretty senior people, pretty seasoned people. So it's not like, if you come and say you're fresh out of grad school or something, your buddy is not going to be like another fresh PhD. This is somebody who's worked for at least 10 years. And that person also plays the role of mentor. So we like to differentiate the manager role from the mentor role. It's not like the manager does not play a mentor role. Obviously, he or she does. But sometimes there are some situations where a little more independence, a safer environment to speak up and to be more engaging, to talk about your aspirations, to talk about some issues. And really to talk about what are you passionate about? What are the types of things? What other lanes do you want to swim in, right? Those are the kind of things managers sometimes like to hold on to that people. Don't take my person. I have a lot of projects, right? That is why, yes. So we invest very heavily in people when they come in. Mentoring plays a very important role. For many years, we've actually had a formal mentorship program where people across departments and sometimes across divisions get mentored. And so maybe a senior level person who works, say, in the chemistry area might be a mentor for an incoming, or say, a statistician who's been there for a few years, just as an example. So again, giving them a broader perspective, sort of far from what they do on a day-to-day basis, just to broaden their horizons.
Any other questions? Because I have I'll do my usual, Devan, I do a rapid round with you. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and you have to answer like in one word or something. But I'll wait if there's any last questions that anybody has.
Devan, can you elaborate whether there are differences in the career paths for statisticians and data scientists? Been hearing statisticians whispers that there's still benefits of choosing late stage clinical trial because that's more stable to stay in the industry, and it brings you the FDA submission experience.
Yeah, great question. So I don't think there's a perfect answer to that question. It all depends on your interest. In general, I would say that this gets back to that earlier question you had, Chong, about if you can continue to broaden your experiences. So you could say start out in early clinical development applications, or even before that in discovery or preclinical. That I spent the first 3 years of my career in the discovery and preclinical area. I learned a lot. Then I made my way into early clinical, then into late clinical. And ideally, that is something that you could consider. So again, there's no right or wrong. I would just encourage everyone to, don't get into a narrow comfort zone. You might think that you are safe but you are limiting your growth. And so, always challenge yourself and challenge yourself. And I don't want to repeat what I said earlier, but again, don't be afraid to fail. I'm getting a little nervous about Naren's now rapid fire questions.
There's nothing to be afraid of anyway. So let's do it. And they're in no particular order of ease or difficulty. They're all easy generally. Okay, your favorite clinical trial result. Because the reason I ask it is because phase 3 trials or any trials are blinded, and then suddenly you're the first people who see the results. Your favorite result? So
my favorite clinical trial result, there was a landmark clinical trial for Merck's HIV vaccine called the STEP trial. I was the lead statistician for the trial, and this was a vaccine that was that the whole world was waiting for, that trial was stopped early because the vaccine had failed miserably. It was the most promising vaccine at the time, but midway through the trial, we had planned an interim analysis, and that trial ended a 10-year journey of our HIV vaccine program, which, by the way, I had to explain from start to finish the 10-year journey to somebody who's been in the news quite a bit. He and several other important people came to Merck. So I had to explain that journey to Tony Fauci.
That's awesome. Your favorite, there are many, but your favorite Nobel Prize winner and why?
Oh my goodness. I guess it would have to be Curie, having won two Nobel Prizes. I think that's my main reasons. Like, wow, I'm like, wow. I like, wow.
I know you have many. So, any mentor that you feel like you feel like made a difference in your life, in your career?
Yeah, most certainly. Like I mentioned earlier in the meeting, my two grandfathers. Unquestionably, I've learned my whole the way to approach life, the way to approach problems, and to do it with a sense of, hopefully, of humility, but excitement about what is yet to come. So that is what I learned from both of them.
Wow. Your favorite travel destination that you've been to?
Portugal.
Portugal. Any reason or just good time?
Yeah, it was very different.
What book are you reading now?
I'm reading a book called, it's a little older book. It's by Eric Topol, called The Creative Destruction of Medicine. And it's basically about digital R&D, about how how these newer technologies are going to change how medicine is practiced.
Eric Topol is the same person who sort of tweets a lot about what's going on with the disease now. Yeah. Same director.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to ask this question later, but since you are reading that book, what is the one thing you would like to change or improve in the drug development process that sort of doesn't work and has to dramatically change?
I guess I'll go back to precision medicine or personalized medicine. Is that because the reality is that, with rare exception, almost every drug ever approved and that is being used in the marketplace, typically these drugs only work for half the people that are going to get them. And that is a shame. That is a shame. And so we need to do everything we can based on our skill set, our experience, whatever we bring to the table to improve that, so that I'm envisioning a world where, every drug that is approved is approved not for everyone, but approved for only the right types of patients, that for these types of patients, this drug. And there's a resistance from drug companies for reasons that are understandable, but not forgivable.
Yeah, that's a great answer. There are a couple of questions which are redundant to what you've asked, but I'll ask it in a different way. So I knew about the STEP trial, so I was hoping that you would answer that question, that answer. But my question is, You've mentioned a couple of times now that you should fail. It's good to fail, or you should learn from your failure. Any failure that you think you learned from, other than the step trial, obviously, that you want to share?
Where do I begin? There have been so many.
Just maybe one or two, just high level.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my early failures, which I wish I've become aware sooner, but it was a question of lack of self-awareness. And so when I came out of grad school, I was I thought I knew everything in statistics, and which obviously was totally bogus. But I realized, unfortunately, only after a few years, that when we got new PhD candidates looking for jobs, I was made aware, unfortunately late rather than early, that you ask a lot of questions in these seminars, but the way you were asking the question really puts that person at unease, and it almost embarrasses them. And of course, and I was so shocked by that. I was so saddened by that. I thought I was doing the person a favor by sort of saying, well, have you considered this new idea? But of course, this person had spent 3 years or 4 years working on a PhD. They had come up with this brilliant idea. And in 5 minutes, I had said, well, it's kind of nice, but here's something much better. And of course, it was only later on I realized I was trying to help them. But my gosh, if somebody did that to me, I would feel so small and insignificant. So I'm so blessed that somebody made me aware of this. And to the best of my knowledge, I have not been doing that anymore.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. And then one last one is advice you'd give give these folks, but also advice as far as when they go for an interview in a company like Merck. Obviously, the subject matter is a given that they have to know. But in addition to the subject matter, what are the couple of things that you look for in a candidate?
Yeah, great question. I'm looking for curiosity. I'm looking for the things that I mentioned earlier. I mean, is this person displaying enthusiasm? Is this person displaying genuineness? Because I actually enjoy interviews that are imperfect and that have clear examples where somebody is displaying imperfections. But if somebody comes across as being too polished and too rehearsed, it actually sometimes doesn't go well. So again, for example, if you ask a question and if the other person is not prepared, I would much rather that person say, great question, I'm sorry, I just don't know the answer. I have no clue. But people will try and fudge their way through. And so again, maybe it's a matter of style, but I'm just sort of expressing my preference that, I would much rather have that person say, yep, no idea.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I hope the questions are not too difficult. You gave great answers, by the way. Fantastic.
Well, thank you. Can I share my very first job interview?
Yes, please.
So my very first job interview when I came out of grad school was with a company called Merck. And this person, very famous statistician at the time, he looked at my CV, he had his head down, and then he looks up and he says, do you want me to ask you 2 easy questions or 1 difficult question? So I said, wow, this is very interesting. I remember I was just out of school. I said, ask me 1 difficult question. So he said, okay, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I was like, wow, this is a very interesting place. So I said, well, I would have to say the chicken. And he said, why? And I said, I'm sorry, you can only ask me 1 question.
And
True story. And of course, I thought I was being funny, and I thought I might have, and I gave a presentation. I thought it went well. The end result was either because he didn't like that answer, or my presentation wasn't as good as I thought it was. I did not get the job, and I had to wait almost 6 years to go back to Merck and actually get a job.
Oh my God, that's a beautiful story. It wasn't Joe Hayes, was it?
No, it was not Joe Hayes. It was somebody who worked in the West Point area.
All right. No, because Joe Hayes is a legend, right? That's is of course. Anyway, thank you so much. This was such a pleasurable, enjoyable hour. Thank you for spending this evening with us, and thank you all of you also for coming and asking these nice questions. All right. So
yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It was wonderful meeting all of you, and again, all the best. I really enjoyed, and my gosh, what an international and geographically dispersed crowd. This is fantastic. And by the way, you guys are really lucky to have Naren teaching you, because he is as good as it gets. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
A network should last a lifetime. Let us help you create lasting professional relationships with our world-class mentors through the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program, a strategic guidance program unlike no other, full of expert interviews, industry internship opportunities, CV writing, inflection point analysis, life maps, and of course, the gateway to your dream career. For a limited time only, all our services are freely available for you, as we truly want you to succeed.